Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Tonight we're back here with Wrestling with Bret with a classic pay-per-view review. Sorry. Hard to do sometimes. Today we're checking out the King of the Ring 1993. Yeah, it's actually the first one, too. So we're about to see who gets crowned the first one. I was going to say Bret Hart, but well, we're about to find out. So be sure to like Scott for more. Hope you enjoy. Let's check it out.
Billy Gunn went to Sam Houston State in Texas on a rodeo scholarship.
You know anybody that didn't go to school?
Well, I used to go there actually, but mental problems. Anyway, not their fault, mine.
Long here on the channel, we are looking back at events and moments in time, not exclusively good ones, that focus on one of the most polarizing legends in all of wrestling. It's time for another installment here on Hulkamania.
Hulkamania.
This week I'm talking about WWF King of the Ring 1993 from June 13th at the Nutter Center in Dayton, Ohio. This show was nominated by Jamel Miller, Harrison Tatum Wyatt, and Heiko Bartels over at patreon.com/wrestlingwithbret.
He's the King of the Ring.
It is the first ever King of the Ring on pay-per-view, that is. King of the Ring as a tournament had been around for several years before this, for house show attractions mostly, occasional storyline fodder for folks like Harley Race and Haku and Jim Duggan and Randy Savage, what have you. But now officially King of the Ring is being brought in as the 5th annual pay-per-view, a new tradition starting here in 93. I know I have a soft spot.
Well, they knew it wasn't going to last long, I think.
For King of the Ring as a
when was the last one? I mean,
I like
it was 1999 or something.
Show happening.
They kind of just set it up for, like, separate
WrestleMania
stuff.
And SummerSlam. We kind of have that now with Money in the Bank, but for a long time, when King of the Ring was retired as a pay-per-view in 2002, until Money in the Bank showed up, there was a very big dark period as far as I'm concerned. Of course, my first King of the Ring memory has nothing to do with the tournament. It's got everything to do with Mankind versus The Undertaker at Hell in a Cell back in '98. Not everyone is a fan of tournaments. Some like them more than others, and as we've seen over the years in WWE, you know, Vincent Mann was kind of a fan and not a fan. He would hop back and forth, alternating years, it seems, sometimes, depending on how much they focused on the pay-per-view. But some people do like
Sometimes I feel like
tournaments.
Vince has a split personality, doesn't he?
You can create with a single night tournament, as we see on this show. Of course, there is a lot of prestige attached with winning the King of the Ring. Not entirely sure what you get out of it besides like a fancy crown and a robe, but don't worry, they still have a long time ahead of them to eventually figure it out. It's also a very interesting...
You know, I never really understood why they didn't say, like, okay, whoever's King of the Ring will have a future, like, I don't know, WWE championship opportunity. Like, I know they give a championship to Mabel, but I don't think that ever happened at the tournament. Like, I think even nowadays, even though Xavier Woods and Selena Vega won the King of the Ring tournament, they never really got a title shot, like, at all. Which seems kind of like a missed opportunity. Like, seriously. If you're claiming like the King of the Ring, you gotta be the best, right? So why not go after the top prize? Right? I mean, could have been a prototype Money in the Bank. You know, I decree it is now time for my title opportunity. You know, that could have worked. Would have been some good storylines back in the day, too. I think. Anyway.
Interesting transitionary time in the Federation as the steroid scandal looms overhead.
Why is Vince in a neck brace?
It definitely feels like this is the breaking point between two distinct eras in WWF history, or at the very least, this show is like kind of what happens when these two eras smash together and create kind of an interesting mosaic. A big combination of like the older stars from the 80s and the new talent, all these future Hall of Famers in the 90s kind of coming up as well. 6,500 folks in the Nutter Center. This show earns 245,000 pay-per-view buys, the highest number this show is going to get until 1998 with 310,000. Jim Ross, Bobby Heenan, and Randy Savage are on commentary here. It's the second and last time this particular trio calls a pay-per-view. On we go to the first quarterfinal matchup in the King of the Ring tournament as Razor Ramon takes on Bret the Hitman Hart. Bret is looking to win this one after what happened to him in the main event of WrestleMania earlier in the year, beat by Yokozuna, and politically backstage kind of forced out of a program program with Hulk Hogan. More on that later. Meanwhile, Razor Ramon is dealing with his own issues at the moment. He was recently upset on Monday Night Raw by the 1-2-3 Kid in one of the most famous moments in that show's history. And of course, a star-making performance by the Kid. That was really put him on the map and made him the star we know him today. The match begins. Bret hangs on to Razor's arm and works it for a good while until Ramon throws Bret shoulder first into the ring post. Ramon stepping on Bret's hands. That's an important point there. Before he hits the fallaway slam, Bret's able to make his comeback, hits his moves of doom. Ramon kicking out of multiple pinfall attempts, shoving Bret chest first into the corner. The Razor's edge attempt is countered into a roll-up and a very close kick out. Razor with a second rope suplex attempt, but Bret counters in midair and covers it for the win to advance. I give it 3.5 stars out of 5. A very crisp and entertaining opening contest here. Really does a good job in setting the tone for what's to come in this pay-per-view, in the tournament, I should say, between these two future legends. I think each guy got their big spots in, even though Ramon's not making it past his first round and has other things to worry about with the 1-2-3 Kid. Still did a very good job showcasing himself in this matchup. Like I said, Ramon would continue the feud with the 1-2-3 Kid after this pay-per-view. He was offering the Kid a cash prize to wrestle him again that kept increasing every single week, but it won't be long after this that Ramon finally makes his face turn. There's a recap of
You know, honestly, I think I actually remember this pay-per-view now. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't this the pay-per-view that Yokozuna won the title off Hogan? Yeah, I think actually that was this pay-per-view, now I think about it. Okay, so remember what Brian said about, you know, what the whole pay-per-view between Bret and Hogan at SummerSlam? Yeah, Hogan was like, nah, bro, that don't work for me, brother. And decided to screw Bret and just give the title back to Yokozuna. Which, you gotta admit, dick move, Hulk. Dick move. Like, sometimes you gotta wonder, I mean, let's be real. If Hulk was around nowadays, he would not be able to do any of this. Like, the internet would probably never let him live it down. I don't think even anyone could, like, pull those politicking bullshits out of the, you know, in the companies nowadays. Could they? I don't know, like, I think Roman could be a good example of that. You know, the politicking and all. But if Triple H ever takes full control, probably ends sooner or later. I don't know. I mean, I could definitely see him, like, you know, giving him a fair chance of losing the title, but anyway.
Mr. Hughes beating the hell out of The Undertaker and Paul Bearer with the urn this past week on Superstars. Then we see he and Harvey Whippleman already in the ring, which is not a good sign as he takes on Mr. Perfect in the next King of the Ring quarterfinal
also
matchup.
with Hughes taking off the
power throughout in this contest.
Straight
Perfect
up,
getting worn down. See him get flung into the corner there. Nice. In the middle of this matchup here, it's a very interesting production choice where we get these picture-in-picture interviews a couple of times in this tournament. The first one we see is with Bret Hart having just wrestled his match before. He's asked which of these two opponents he'd like to wrestle in the next round, and he picks Perfect, putting him over pretty nicely, but that is going to play a role in what we see with the promo with them later on here. There's an ugly slam attempt here, but they keep a move in. Perfect dodging a big
no wonder Hughes doesn't really last long.
Hughes grabs the urn and decks Perfect with it and gets disqualified in the process. Very smart. Perfect advances to face Bret in the next round. I give it 1 star out of 5. Probably the weakest match in the entire tournament, but it's not done.
No kidding, with a DQ finish like that. Like, really paints Hughes as an idiot.
His feud with the Undertaker, so you can't have Perfect just pinning his shoulders to the mat or anything. Hughes still looking very dangerous and devastating the way he went about it, so makes him look strong in that sense. So yeah, Mr. Perfect was given a big assignment in trying to make Hughes look good in this matchup, and he did the best he could. Mean Gene in the very Japanified locker room of Yokozuna and Mr.
With
Fuji.
only a flag there.
Fuji ranting about Hulk Hogan, saying that he cheated to win the title at WrestleMania, taking advantage of
Ain't wrong there.
Wrestled a match, but now Yoko is healthier and wiser. Yokozuna wrapping this up by saying Hulkamania will die tonight. In our next quarterfinal matchup, Hacksaw Jim Duggan takes on Bam Bam Bigelow. Duggan with several clotheslines to finally knock Bam Bam down early on. Big USA chance for Duggan, and I guess for Bigelow too, seeing as he is also from America. Bigelow has Duggan in a bear hug. He goes for a big headbutt.
So the Star-Spangled Trunks.
Makes his comeback, goes for the 3-point stance. Gets none of it though. Bam Bam with a diving headbutt and the win. I give it 1.5 stars out of 5.
Yeah, pretty
Not a
short
bad
one.
match, just pretty short and sweet. Still tells a good story throughout, so I'll give it that. I was watching this show with my wife, and as I was taking my notes, for whatever reason, it was this particular match. We both kind of look at each other and go, yeah, wrestling today is not at all like what this is. Obviously, it's very much of the time. We watch AEW together, and so that's kind of our baseline. And so whenever we watch older stuff like this, it is kind of a culture shock to see just how much wrestling has evolved from this period. I'm Terry Taylor, and I look really out of place as I interview the Smoking Guns and the Steiner Brothers. Up next in the King of the Ring quarterfinal, our last quarterfinal matchup here, as the narcissist Lex Luger takes on Tatanka Buffalo in the World Wrestling Federation. Referee Mike Chioda wanting Lex to put a pad over his surgically
before or after the
forearm,
2-year
and
streak?
Lex objects, but he
remember.
does end up having to wear it or he'll be eliminated.
Oh yeah, the
Tatanka
steel
makes
plated
his way to the
elbow.
ring, gets
I remember,
dumped
right?
out fairly quick. Luger does some more posing, and Tatanka responds by
Oh!
shoving the mirror onto him. Ross and Heenan begin
Guess
to
he didn't
bicker
hit the
each
bell
other as
yet.
Tatanka works the arm. Bam Bam Bigelow shows up with a picture,
Hey, Bam, welcome
of
back.
his own, and he's got something to say. He wants to get his hands on the Indian in the next round, according to him. Heenan making many Native American
sounds
jokes
racist.
on commentary as the narcissist takes over for several minutes. Tatanka nearly surprises Luger with a roll-up, but not enough.
Almost.
Despite the elbow pad, Luger's arm still is plenty powerful. These guys are working a physical back and forth as we get closer and closer to the time limit. Tatanka on a roll hits a tomahawk, but only gets a 2 count. Diving off the top again and misses. They keep fighting, and then the time limit expires. It's declared a draw, and Bam Bam's going to advance, go right on to the finals of the bye, but Luger grabbing a mic, he demands 5 more minutes, but psych, he decks Tatanka from behind with his bionic forearm. No wonder Tatanka will accuse him later on of having sold out. I give it 3 stars out of 5. It's a pretty entertaining matchup despite the time limit finish. I think this is probably my favorite match on the card that doesn't involve Bret Hart or Mr. Perfect. I've been so back and forth with Lex over the years I've been doing these reviews. He's very hot and cold to me as a performer, but this was a really good matchup here he had with Tatanka. We get a classic war of words.
Yeah. Okay, so guess it predicts both guys, and makes Luger look strong too. So much Tatanka, if you think about it. Just saying, you gotta see that. Anyway, Bret and Perfect in the same room. Look.
Words with Bret Hart and Mr. Perfect backstage before their next matchup. Mean Gene starts some shit by bringing up Bret's earlier comments where he said he'd rather face Perfect in the next round, and Mr. Perfect completely misinterpreting those words. Then they go into an argument over whose dad could beat whose dad. Perfect saying he's a winner, and Bret goes, well, you weren't a winner at SummerSlam 2 years ago, huh? Ooh, snap. Bret's music plays, he goes to leave while Perfect gets some parting words in a classic war of words here. We go to that matchup
Here we
now,
go.
Hart versus Perfect, and you can
President
see
start
Bret's
a
got
brawl
his
there.
fingers taped up after they got stepped on earlier. Storytelling. Match begins at wrestling clinic. Bret really working the
sure he
headlock
didn't
for a
just
long
jam it?
time until Perfect hits a low knee and takes over. Perfect has some brief sportsmanship for Bret, but not for long.
Yeah, nope.
Bret on the apron.
That's
He gets
anything less from
launched into the
Perfect?
barricade. Perfect with a missile dropkick off the top, but Bret catching a lucky break in the ropes. Bret comes back with a big old superplex. The figure 4 is applied, and Perfect fights hard to get to the ropes. Perfect with the sleeper locked in. We get a rope break. Perfect now showing the effects of the leg attacks. Bret with a big forearm to begin his comeback. Hits more of his moves of doom. Perfect selling wonderfully. Bret going for the sharpshooter, but Mr. grabs the injured hand, and Bret goes down from the pain. Bret fights out of the Perfect plex. Both men
Yikes.
tumble over the top rope. Back in the ring, Perfect with a small package. Bret
one
reverses
of his
it
own?
and wins to go on to
Nice.
the finals. I give it 4.5 stars out of 5. This was an absolute
definitely
classic
best.
matchup here. I mean, Bret and Mr. Perfect, their chemistry over the years was something really special. They bring up SummerSlam 91 as
True.
an example
Two
of
technical
that.
wizards.
We're
You're definitely gonna love it.
That trend here in this matchup. And both guys, it's face versus face here. That is always going to be a
Really?
tough
Perfect's face?
challenge for anyone. But I think these two really nail it. They get the dynamic right. And like I said, it's a technical classic. They get everything down to a T. And more of that great storytelling with Bret's injured hands. We go to an extreme close-up of an angry airbrushed Hulk Hogan. That's just Jimmy Hart wearing
No,
it.
it's Jimmy Hart. There you
Mean
go.
Gene calling Hulk Hogan possibly the greatest hero in the history of the planet. Hogan says he's
Yeah,
flying
that's
heavy
bull.
artillery in his test against Yokozuna. Jimmy Hart's pumped about managing the Hulkster nowadays, screaming the lyrics to Hogan's future WCW theme.
This man has red, white, and blue running through his veins, and he was born and raised in the USA.
Hogan raps the
Yeah, let's be real. No one would buy that. Come on. Him, the greatest hero? Yeah, well, like the biggest bullshitter. Like, seriously, try to bury The Undertaker by saying caressed his neck. Like, dude, not cool. Like, come on, man. And not to mention the racist rant he had. Like, sheesh. Like, seriously. Dude, you were a big star back then, but now, just a big asshole. Yeah, even nowadays, people are just looking at this and be like, yep, asshole. Even the union busting, if you don't take that in consideration, still an asshole. Like, no matter how you slice it, still a big jerk. Like, him calling the greatest hero, yeah, right. You think Hogan, like, made him say that? Because, come on. Anyway.
Promo up in his typical style, and on we go now as the first ever 5-time WWF champion Hulk Hogan defends against the mighty Yokozuna. Back in February, Hulk Hogan came back to TV after letting the heat die down from his controversial appearance on the Arsenio Hall show surrounding the big steroid scandal in the company at the time. Then at WrestleMania 9, he infamously swooped in after the scheduled main event of Bret versus Yokozuna and became the champion. I will admit this much. We look back on that moment now with a lot of disdain and going, oh my God, what a terrible moment this was. I certainly brought that up in my worst WrestleMania main events countdown, but you cannot deny
dick
that
move.
in that
Definitely
moment,
a dick move.
when Hogan does win the belt in Las Vegas, the fans are there for it. They like what they see here. I guess because they're happy that Yokozuna is no longer the champion.
What was going on backstage?
I mean, that whole in that moment, the reaction of the fans popping for Hogan winning, that does not transfer over to television ratings and house numbers, because Hogan winning the championship again does not move the needle like they had all previously assumed. Meanwhile, as this is going on, Hogan has visions of retirement and Thunder in Paradise dancing about in his head, so he is definitely on the way out. It is originally planned for Bret to face Hogan for the belt at SummerSlam, but Hogan allegedly shoots it down. Bret in his book says that Hogan out and out refused to put Bret over in the program, and Hogan allegedly saying that it would never be believable for him to lose to someone like Bret. And Hogan has denied this and said that it was
ego
Vince McMahon's
stroking
call to end that program before it began. But we remember Hulk has a rich history of lying in the past and exaggerating things and maybe bending the truth just a little bit. So instead we get a retread of Hogan versus Slaughter or Hogan versus Volkov or any of those other standard
basically USA versus foreign powers
versus Japan. It's being built as this big fight for American honor. They're in the heartland of America. It is just fascinating to me that that is the narrative they're going with this feud with Hogan, when we know in hindsight that they're just going to take that same basic template and just going to pick it up and just plop it onto Lex Luger months after this. Lots of Japanese.
Yeah, honestly, the whole, like, USA thing, you'd think they would have taken that, like, you know, the whole barely the needle moving from WrestleMania 7. You'd think they would have stopped at that point, but nope, still going. Like, seriously, really? Goodly. I mean, let's be real. If this was anything else, we'd be accused of being racist. Like, ay. Anyway.
Japanese photographers around, aren't there? Yes, sir. Plenty of Japanese photographers in our presence for this match. Pay them no mind, though. Match begins with a big lockup.
You saw the beard.
Hogan with the shove, Yoko with the shove. It's like he's throwing America to the ground. Yoko with the big club that blows for a while, but Hogan comes back with the corner punches, teasing the slam a couple of times, but Yokozuna is just too big.
What is this, boxing match?
The splash, but Hogan moves. Hogan's caught in the bear hug, and they hold on to that for a very long time as a big USA chant erupts from the crowd. Hogan breaks out, but he cannot follow up. Yoko hitting him hard once again. We get the big suplex.
That Evan in the front row.
Hogan powers out and hulks up. It takes 3 big boots to finally take Yokozuna down, but the challenger kicks out of the leg drop. Fuji gets up and gets knocked down. One of those Japanese photographers gets on the apron with his camera. It explodes, and Hogan takes a fireball to the face. Yokozuna with the leg drop of his own and wins to become the new champion. After the match, Yoko and Fuji beat up Hogan some more, and Yokozuna hits the bonsai, and they say on commentary, Hulkamania is dead, and they are squashing the American dream. Those bastards. I give it 1.5 stars out of 5. The match was pretty boring right up until the Hulk up. That power out spot was really fun to see. I think the fans were waiting for the Hulk up, and when they got it, they were there for it. Then after that point, things were pretty exciting and whatnot, but everything before that was pretty much a snooze fest. The Japanese photographer, it was Harvey Whippleman in disguise. I don't think a camera can actually do that. They try to say the camera exploded on him as if it was some kind of accident that the camera did that. But I think it's so funny because, like, what camera has the capability of just catching into a ball of fire? Realistically, I wonder. But of course, it was all a big setup to protect Hogan. Hogan never slamming Yokozuna. They kept that on the table, but they never actually got that because by that point afterward, this is Hogan's last pay-per-view appearance for the Federation until 2002 when he and Nash and Hall come back for the NWO. But he will be there for a little bit of TV. He's on the international tour after this. And then Hogan sits out the rest of his contract, and he is done with the Federation and presumably with wrestling. But, of course, we all know that's not the case. Backstage,
2 years later, back in WCW.
Perfect for Coliseum Video. Perfect puts over Bret for a bit, but he doesn't want to talk about the loss anymore, so he goes to leave. Elsewhere, Gene Okerlund.
Hey, Shawn. Hey, Diesel.
Champion Shawn Michaels with his new mysterious bodyguard who debuted about a week before this. Shawn Michaels planting seeds for SummerSlam 2005 by calling Hulk Hogan a dinosaur and says that Yokozuna ate him up like a Jurassic burger. Nice. So who's the big guy with no name? Shawn reveals that his name is Diesel. So that's how it happens. In an 8-man tag match, the Head Shrinkers and Money Inc. joined forces to take on the Smoking Guns and the Steiner Brothers, Scott and Rick, the latter of which got a lot of attention this past WrestleMania weekend for all the wrong reasons. Seeing the build-up for this matchup I thought was great. I think the build-up was more entertaining than the
Usually
match itself.
Usually you see Scott being the one that's causing chaos.
Is like DiBiase tries to give the Head Shrinkers some money, and they don't know what to do with the money, so Alpha just eats it. Match opens up with DiBiase and Scott Steiner. Macho Man on commentary talking about more things to come.
I'm mentally and physically drained. I can't believe it. And there's more yet to come.
Scott and Rick working together to beat up Ted for a bit. In comes Michael Barton, who ends up taking a lot of heat from in this matchup. In comes Billy for a hot tag, who gets a small run, but he is cut off by DiBiase. The action continues until Billy catching a cocky DiBiase with a surprise roll-up. Truly the most devastating move throughout the ages. Steiners and the Guns win. I give it 2 stars out of 5. A lot of bodies to account for in this matchup here. It's kind of all over the place, but it's an okay match, I would say. Like I said, the build to this was a lot more entertaining to me personally than this matchup here. Soon after
good
this,
build up,
Steiner
just
Brothers
bad
and
match.
Money Inc. would trade the tag titles back and forth for like a week after this until the Steiners finally get the gold for a second time and hold on to it for about 3 months. Mean Gene back in the Japanese dressing room as President Jack Tunney congratulates Yokozuna for his big win. No mention of the exploding camera or nothing. Mr. Fuji declares that Hulkamania is dead and that there will be a big celebration, not in Japan, but right here in the good old US of A. Again, those bastards. In the semi-main event for the Intercontinental Championship, Shawn Michaels
you don't see that often.
Against Kona Crush. Shawn is the reason Crush didn't make it into the King of the Ring tournament, so Mr. Shaka Bra is out for revenge and wants the title. Crush showing his agility.
Rarely see like the Intercontinental title being placed higher than the WWE title.
Pressing him, Diesel makes the save and stands in between Crush, allowing Shawn to take over, repeatedly driving Crush's head into the ring post. Brings his deadweight carcass back into the ring, but still can't put him away. Crush manages to fight back, mounting a big comeback, just hucking Shawn over the ring as he splats onto the apron. Suddenly we see 2 doinks. By God, the 2 doinks are back. The distraction's enough to cost Crush the match. Michaels wins and retains. 2.5 stars for me on this one. This was an okay match. I think these two have really good chemistry together. Shawn selling like a demon for Crush in this matchup here, and Crush gets to show off his range, his agility, which is great for him. So I think it would turn out to be a pretty darn solid matchup. And of course, Crush cannot withstand, he cannot resist the force and the attraction of those 2 doinks. Doink continuing to make children cry and continuing to cost Crush matches. Backstage, Bam Bam, Bigelow says he is fresh as a daisy and ready for the chance to become the first quote-unquote King of the Ring. On we go to the finals of the tournament now as Bam Bam takes on Bret Hart. And like he was in Survivor Series 89, Bigelow was once again involved in the main event of a first-of-its-kind pay-per-view. The guys start out throwing bombs, but Bam Bam is much fresher and fights back. He dumps Bret out of the ring. Back inside, the heat continues to be poured onto the Hitman. Bigelow working Bret's back extensively. Big back suplex by Bigelow.
On the
outside, the whip is reversed, and Bigelow crashing hard into the barricade. Bret is then
the kids are okay.
Post not long after. Referee is distracted. That allows for Luna Vachon to hit Bret with a chair. Bigelow goes way up top, hits the giant headbutt, gets the 3 count and the win. Bam Bam declared the winner until Earl Hebner runs in and tells Joey Marella what happened, and the match is ruled to continue. Bam Bam's got Hitman in a bear hug, then a couple of backbreakers, but Bret fights out of it and comes back, countering into a sleeper. Moments later, Bret launching himself over the top rope to the outside. Bret with a second rope attack, getting some momentum, but Bigelow cuts him off again.
Bear hug.
Victory roll out of nowhere, and Bret wins to become the King of the Ring. I give it 3.5 stars out of 5 here. Great final matchup in the tournament. Bret winning makes him the first and only man to have won the tournament twice, technically, although one of those was during the house show era, so as we all know, it does not count. But be that as it may, this match was a lot of fun. Very good.
Wait, was this the one that, you know,
we saw in the earlier
Jerry Lawler's
rounds
debut for the company, or was that in 91? I can't remember.
Getting that second round by does a really good job really driving up the emotional oomph and impact in this matchup here. And the story that Bret told with not being able to use his hands, apparently he was told not to win any of the matches in this tournament with the sharpshooter. So that's why you had these different finishes each round he had, and why the story was his hands.
Wait, why couldn't he use the sharpshooter? Was something going on?
Yeah, I think that was Bret becoming.
I just had to ask.
I guess you would call it a consolation prize to not get in that SummerSlam program with Hogan. I think does a good job here because this tournament is really all about Bret. He's get to showcasing just how good he really is. And after a performance like this, you can't really deny it. He looks strong here, main event caliber. It definitely worked. It's now time for the coronation. Bret puts on his sparkly robe, holding the scepter high as Jerry Lawler.
Oh, yeah, there's Jerry.
Jerry
right.
debuted for the company as an announcer late the previous year, and now he's getting into it with Bret here. He takes offense to Bret being called a king. Bret calling Jerry a Burger King, gets a chant going until Lawler jumps him from behind and beats the crap out of him. He even picks up the throne and throws it down onto Bret's back.
Jesus.
Beats the devil out of him as we go off the air, beginning what will become a multi-year feud between them. But as we have learned on this channel, the face and heel dynamic between them is much different in Memphis. My grade for the inaugural King of the Ring pay-per-view is a B-.
B-,
I feel the same way about this show that I did about Survivor Series.
A lot of Bret's and pros.
It was this inaugural show type. They're telling you
Perfect had a bad match with Hughes.
What the rules and the parameters.
I think that's mostly
on
Hughes'
all about.
fault.
Here's this concept we're introducing to you. And, using Bret as kind of the way to show, here's the ideal way of telling the story and how the King of the Ring pay-per-view is going to go, I think was a great idea. Again, that arc of Bret having 3 matches with 3 very different opponents and telling the story the way they did was so well done. And I think there were a couple of matches on the show that weren't, they weren't the best, but they didn't detract from my overall enjoyment of the show. The tournament was the selling point of this pay-per-view for me, and it definitely came through. Even Hogan and Yokozuna, as not great of a match it was, that finish was still very memorable and still very different to see the fireball getting used. How ironic is it that on a show where Jerry Lawler's there, he's not the one using the fireball? I thought that was very interesting. But yeah, overall, for an inaugural maiden voyage for the King of the Ring pay-per-view, I thought it was pretty good. Yeah. Well, usually the week after,
and some big hype moments from WWE history right here. So you can't go wrong with this. Whew. Okay, so we'll see what the next one's later. But for now, thanks for watching, everybody. Till next time, subscribe for more. See ya.